Welcome to yet another edition of the Stats and Stacks podcast, where today we're going to go over UFC, what is it, UFC Vegas 37, I think at this point, Smith versus Spann. There was a break last week, so not much going on. We did do a football podcast. We're going to do another one as the NFL season is starting with some spreads and some fantasy, just fantasy advice for the week. That'll come a little bit later on in the week. Otherwise, we got a full slate of fights. Really don't want to waste a lot of your time here. We got 15 fights. We had a few fall out, and they found replacements for every single one. So as of right now, before weigh-ins, we're still looking at a 15-fight slate. So let's not spend too much time lollygagging around. No review from last week because there were no events. So let's hop right into it. In all honesty, let's see here. We got very first fight of the night. We have Emily Whitmire going up against Hannah Goldie. One of these fights, a fighter stepped up last minute. We have Whitmire, and the odds kind of reflect that. I had Whitmire at minus 130, Hannah Goldie even money. Over under isn't out, just considering it's going to be some skewed number with it being women's strawweight. So we'll start with Hannah Goldie, actually, because she took this fight on short notice. I do want you to remember that she predominantly fights at flyweight. She looked perfectly fine at strawweight, her last fight against Diana Belbita. But I do want you to keep in mind that this isn't her usual weight class. She usually fights up, and she's dropping down again. So with her taking it short notice, I know she's always in shape. But just make sure she looks okay on the scale. It's only going to be her second time going down the straw weight, and this one's short notice, so make sure you're cognizant of that. In regards to her fighting ability itself, her stand-up's okay. It's just she has some really short arms and short legs. So her last two fights, she kind of struggled with like Belbita and Granger. Because they had a big reach advantage, and she wants to strike, but she couldn't hit the target that well because of her little T-Rex arms. In regards to her cardio, it seems to check out. She's decent volume, in all honesty. She has some pretty high volume, so that looks really good in the judges' eyes. Otherwise, the thing with this matchup in particular is that Emily also doesn't have a large reach. So this is going to be the first time Hannah's fought someone with a similar reach to be able to actually hit the target in a while. So I do favor Hannah on the feet. Emily predominantly, she has really fast hands, in all honesty. She's good. She's not as bad on the feet as I thought prior to tape study, but she does like the mix in the wrestling. That seems where she feels most comfortable. My only concern is that, one, she's extremely hittable on the feet. Even though her hands are really fast, she gets hit quite a bit. She also doesn't have nearly as much volume as Hannah usually does. And her jiu-jitsu game, man, she has 4 losses, and they're all 4 are by submission. So that is very concerning, especially because she's the one initiating the grappling. And to win this fight, she probably will have to initiate the grappling. The only good news for her is that Hannah Goldie has 0 submission wins on her record. So it's going to be very interesting how this works out. Is Emily going to take her down and hold her down and actually stay safe for once? Or is Hannah going to kind of piece her out with the high volume? Her takedown defense seemed okay. Is she just going to piece her up, just kind of outworking her on the feet? In all honesty, I'm not a big fan of this fight. I would probably stay away. If you wanted to bet it, there's not enough value for me with Hannah just being an even money. But I would pick her to win the fight just because of the volume. And in all honesty, I would bet Hannah if you're going to bet that fight. That's not really one I would want to bet. You have 15 fights. You don't have to force anything. Another one that I really wouldn't want to force is the Gustavo Lopez at minus 105. Haley Alatang at minus 125. I actually didn't have an over-under on this one either. There was a problem with my app, so we're just going to go over the odds themselves. Gustavo, we'll start with him, considering he's the dog. Not plus money, he's just a dog in general. He has okay striking. His takedown defense isn't as bad as you think. Yes, he got taken down. Like he has like a 27% takedown defense or something like that in the UFC. He got taken down 13 times by Merab Dvalishvili, who's like the best wrestler in the division. So there's no shame there. Merab ruins everyone's takedown defense numbers. He goes in and averages like 12 takedowns a fight. So he just kind of skews those numbers. Otherwise, Gustavo took down Anthony Burchak, who's like who was a D1 wrestler. So I don't think his wrestling is that bad. His durability does come into question solely because he looks like a world beater the first round, but he does have a tendency to slow down. And when he fights higher competition, when he slow downs, he gets finished. Otherwise, you can back him up a little, but he likes to counter, and I think that's the reason why. In all honesty, he's going to have a major striking advantage against Alatang. Alatang has great wrestling; it's very underrated. I'm pretty sure he was like an alternate or tried out for the Olympic team in regards to like the Mongolian wrestling team. So his wrestling is very good, definitely better than Gustavo's. His striking leaves a little to be desired. But his durability is the complete opposite. He's very, very durable. He could take one hell of a beating. You don't want him to take a beating because then that means he's losing the fight. But in retrospect, he also likes to counter. So it's going to be interesting to see which one backs up and which one's countering. Palatang's definitely more hittable than Gustavo is. But again, that's to start the fight. So I fully anticipate Gustavo winning the first round. And then this round 2 and 3 are going to decide who actually wins the fight. The only thing I would say, because his cardio seems to check out as well, Alatang. So what I would say is when you have a fight this closely lined and a fight that you're not sure who's going to win, you look for any little itty bitty thing. And one thing that's been winning me money over and over again, it got pointed out in the Die Hard MMA podcast, and I've been following the train, is that Fight Ready, baby. And that's where Alatang is. He is training for this fight at Fight Ready. I trust that camp the most. So if gun to my head, I would take Alatang as the pick. In regards to the bet, honestly, I want to pass. I want no part of this. I know it's going to be lined at like 2.5. Gosh, I don't know what the lines are currently. I did do this tape a little earlier than usual. So at that juncture, I would probably I would pick Alatang, and if you had to bet, I would just bet him straight up. Because even if it's a little close on the feet, hopefully he's able to just take him down and control. I do think Gustavo is going to win that first round. It just is a matter of how Alatang responds in the second and third, and he's very durable, so I kind of expect him to, kind of rally and get a very, very close and suspect decision win. Next fight of the night is one I like a lot. I don't like how late I was to the party, though. We have Impa Kasaganai going up against Carlston Harris. Impa minus 130 favorite, Carlston minus 105. I am a little late to the party. I did see Carlson as like a plus 115 underdog earlier, and I actually like him a lot. Carlson has great wrestling. It's not good. He uses it wonderfully. He's a very, very good wrestler. He has good cardio. It seems to check out. His striking isn't the greatest, but he rocks people a lot. It's not good at all, in all honesty, but he hits like a truck. But it doesn't really matter because if it's not working or he's not rocking you, he's just going to take you down anyway. He's consistent with his takedowns. He has one hell of a squeeze on him. He has a plethora of submission wins. I can't even emphasize how many submission wins he's had. Let's see. Let's take a quick look here. I didn't even look at the other ones. So many fights this card. But Carlson, he has a lot of great wins outside the UFC too. He only has one win in the UFC. He's only had one fight. And it was a submission quickly. But I mean, he has wins over my boy Michel Pereira. He has wins over Wellington Turman. Like he was beating UFC guys before being in the UFC. His losses, I'm just trying to see how durable he is. He did get knocked out once about 3 years ago. Otherwise, split decision losses. But yeah, even like people like Carl Booth, I know is a really good prospect coming out of like England, I want to say, or the UK or something like that. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, he has KO wins. He has submissions. He has a really, really sick Darce choke. He uses that quite a bit. I just like him a lot. I do think, in all honesty, he really, really reminds me of like a welterweight Corey Anderson. He fights exactly like him. He hits hard, even though it's not good on the feet. He's consistent, persistent with his wrestling. Only his ground game's a lot better than Corey Anderson. So if you can picture Corey Anderson at welterweight, you have Carlson Harris. When it comes to Impa, he could be a prospect later on. He's not. He was supposed to be a prospect, but he's really looking shaky as of late. He was at middleweight for a while. He had like a six pack at middleweight and managed to drop down to welterweight. I was concerned about him dropping, but the weight cut seemed to be perfectly fine the last fight against Sasha. But his performance was not. He did not look the greatest because Sasha's not good by any means. And he was actually getting pieced up on the feet, and he just doesn't have a lot of like he. When you look at the numbers, it says it's high volume, but when you watch him fight, a lot of that is like ground and pound. Because on the feet, he just doesn't offer a ton. His wrestling was okay, and that's how he used it against Sasha. He took him down and then got the rear naked choke. His cardio seems to check out, even for a big muscular guy. He does have a tendency to be a-okay in the cardio department. In his jiu-jitsu, he has a few submission wins, like I said, so he knows what's going on down there. He's just a little green, a little newer. I mean, his first fight was 2 years ago, his first pro fight. So there's someone they wanted to push really badly. I know he had a former like football career, nothing high up. It was like a Canadian football league or something like that. But in all honesty, when it comes to the feet, I think Impa's more technical, but Carlson hits a little harder. Impa never has 0 knockouts on his career. When it comes to the wrestling, it's not even close. Carlson will destroy him. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, Carlson has the better ground game. He's just better everywhere. So having him at dog money would be awesome because he's my pick and he's my bet. Unfortunately, that line is getting closer and closer, and it might flip by fight time. So I would bet Carlson. I would trust him. He might end up being a lock of the night, but I would do it quickly. I would do it before it flips and he's actually the favorite. Otherwise, next fight of the night is another one that's in heavy consideration for lock of the night. We have Aaron Blanchfield going at minus 325. Going up against Sarah Alpar at plus 235. It's a big line. I'm not a fan of how big that line is. However, Aaron's that good. She's super, super young. It's someone the UFC is going to push super, super hard. Man, she's just good everywhere. She has really good striking. She has decent striking. I wouldn't say really, really good, but it's presentable. It's a little more than presentable. Her wrestling's really good. I would say that. And her ground game, she is a black belt, so she's very good on the ground. She's just a complete package. She's young. They can market her really well, kind of like they wanted to do with like Macy Barber and Miranda Maverick. She's kind of next in line, and she's a flyweight as well. So this division is getting younger and they're getting better. Her one career loss was against Tracy Cortez. I watched that split decision loss. I don't know how she lost that. I thought she crushed Tracy Cortez, and Tracy has been doing very, very well in the UFC. So that's good on her end. It doesn't look bad as a loss, but I'm telling you, she won that fight. She has 0 flaws. Her only flaw is how young she is. So they need to kind of work her up steadily. They can't just throw her into the fire. And lucky for her, they are doing that. They're giving her Sarah Alpar. All respect in the world to Sarah Alpar. She's a gamer. She fights hard. But sometimes, when you have that reputation as being the durable girl, that means you're getting your ass whooped. And that's kind of what Sarah does. I know she had some like wrestling credentials in high school and she bills herself as a wrestler. But watching her, it's not there. She shoots a lot. She tries to wrestle, but she's not getting the takedown. Her striking is non-existent. Don't even really see it at all. All she does is shoot on legs. And when you do hit her, she just backs up. She doesn't like to get hit. Like I respect Sarah Alpar a lot. I just don't think that she's necessarily UFC caliber. She can just spam takedowns on the regional scene, but in the UFC, if someone has good takedown defense and she can't get it, she's in some serious trouble. And unfortunately, I think Aaron is the better wrestler here. and the better striker and the better jiu-jitsu practitioner. So I think she's in serious trouble. So does the Vegas, considering she's minus 325 in her debut. So the pick is going to be Aaron, and the bet is going to be Aaron, and she will be in some of my parlays. Next fight of the night, we have Montel Jackson going up against JP Buys. Jackson was like a minus 630 favorite, and JP Buys come back was like plus 425. This is another late replacement. JP Buys jumping in, or Bays. I'm sorry, it's not pronounced Buys, it's Bays. Montel, we'll start with him. He's someone that the UFC wants to push as well. He has really good striking. He has good offensive wrestling. His takedown defense is a little questionable. He gets taken down in every single fight. He's got the little skinny legs. Huge hands. You'll hear the UFC, the commentators will talk about his hands over and over and over. Oh, his glove size is bigger than Francis Ngannou when he's at bantamweight. They're going to say it at least 10 times, so be ready for that. But again, his striking's good. His takedowns on the offensive side are good. Defensively, wrestling, he needs to shore up for sure. He has okay jiu-jitsu. He tapped out people like Brian Boom Callagher. He has some decent wins on here, in all honesty. And he's really good. And the people that beat him, Brett Johns is a wrestler and was able to control him. Ricky Simone is a wrestler, able to control him. And those are his two losses. So you would think that's kind of his kryptonite. And when you're really looking at it realistically, JP Bays also builds himself as a wrestler. I know he has some pretty high wrestling credentials in the South African scene. There's his striking's okay. It's not that bad. It's pretty good for him being a wrestler. His ground game's pretty decent. I don't know if he's a black belt yet, but it is pretty decent watching it. He used it a lot more on the regional scene. Problem being his fight against Bruno Silva, he was a big favorite. Everyone made a big deal about him and Cheyenne, his wife, being on the same card. Bruno Silva knocked him out because he didn't shoot one takedown. So I know that his striking is pretty decent for being a wrestler, but why is he not utilizing it? That is concerning. That's saying one of two things. Either he's not that great on the ground, which he seemed just fine when I saw him there, or he has really poor fight IQ. The kid's only 25 years old, and I'm concerned it's the latter. After getting knocked out like that, though, generally people have a tendency to come in and wrestle even more. So initially I looked at JP for a quick second. I did think, well, plus 425, he is a wrestler. The guy he's fighting struggles against wrestlers. Maybe I'll take the shot. But then I remembered that he's a flyweight. He's taking this fight on short notice, on a week's notice, and he's going up a weight class to go against Montel Jackson, who is one of the biggest bantamweights. So the size discrepancy is just going to hurt a little bit in regards to the wrestling. Also, the thing I keep playing over in my head is Montel, with his bigger than Francis Ngannou hands, does like to do Dagestani handcuffs. And it's not just when he's on top, and when he takes you down and he grabs your wrist and controls you and punches you in the face. He does it when he's on his back. He'll literally grab your hand, push it to the side and say, all right, you're going to get off me because I'm going to get up because I have your hand. You can't hold me down. And him being a weight class above JP, even if JP manages to get him down, I just keep picturing him grabbing JP's hand and just shucking him off and just standing right back up. And JP taking the fight on short notice, I don't really trust his conditioning all the way. So the pick is going to be Montel, but you can't bet it just because he's, again, in the minus 600s. So then you're looking at like an over under. JP did just get knocked out by Bruno Silva, so I would lean the under. But honestly, I love Montel, but I don't think I can bet this fight because I don't trust the over under, and I'm not going to bet minus 600. So pick is Montel. The bet, if anything, would be the under, but it's just a stay away, unfortunately. All right. And then the next fight of the night is yet another fill-in. We have Nicholas Mata as well. I don't know the odds because they just put this in. We have Nicholas Mata going up against Cameron Van Camp. I was able to watch some film on on Van Camp. And I'll tell you right now, he's going to be a pretty sizable dog. Just because what I saw on the feed, I was not impressed with at all. He throws some wild stuff. He has really good jujitsu. I'll tell you that. He does get a lot of like standing guillotines, and his wrestling seemed a little questionable. It seems okay, but not great. He definitely wants to get it on the ground because jujitsu is the best part of his game. I mean, even just looking at his record, you have a Darce choke, a submission, an arm bar, a rear naked choke, a guillotine, punches, triangle choke, rear naked choke, triangle choke. Like that is his game. He likes it. He likes to tap you out. That's his whole game. In the striking, he wants it on the ground so badly he'll throw like the flying knees and spinning attacks. That way you take him down, and then he'll kind of scramble from there. But he's hittable, man. He gets hit a lot, and that's a regional scene. His striking is bad. It's wild, but like Charles Oliveira has wild. He had wild striking, and then when it hit the ground, he was fine because that's where he wanted it. Like it worked out for him. This guy, when he gets hit, he's getting cracked. His striking is bad. And Nicholas Matas is good. It's very, very good. He hits like a truck. He has really slick counters, man. They're beautiful. He doesn't really push the pace, but at the same time, when he counters, he makes them count. A ton of knockouts on his record. That's predominantly how he wins. The problem is how he predominantly loses is either getting cracked with something crazy, which Van Camp wants to throw, or getting submitted. He doesn't have the greatest takedown defense, and he has pretty bad Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So that is concerning because that's all Van Camp wants to do is to wrestle and submit you. So in all honesty, you have a jiu-jitsu practitioner that can't strike, and you have a striker that can't wrestle. I'm gonna pick Mata just because he had the full fight camp and he was training for Jim Miller, who's gonna fight exactly like Van Camp wants to. So I'll pick Mata, but I'm not gonna bet him just because he's a liability on the ground. So I'll actually pick the under. It's nothing crazy right now. It's like minus 120, but everyone is getting on it. It's starting to get steamed. So I'd probably get on it sooner rather than later. So the pick is Mata, and I would do the under 2.5 before it gets too juiced. And the next fight of the night is one that literally changed today. We have Brandon Jenkins going up against Zhu Rong, so obviously no odds yet. I'm assuming Zhu is going to be the favorite. I didn't really get a chance to do a lot of fight tape on Jenkins. I saw that he has pretty decent striking. He throws a lot of wild stuff too, kind of like Van Camp, just a little more assertive, a little better at it. A lot of flying knees. Here, let's take a quick look at his record. 15-7. Most of them are predominantly by decision and knockout. I know his last win was a PFL win against Jacob Malkoun, who was in the UFC for a short stint, so at least it's a UFC caliber guy that he beat. And in his beat, he knocked him out in the first round. And PFL was a good promotion. It was a switch flying knee. 2 fights before that, he had a spinning back elbow knockout. Like he's just throwing some wild stuff, knees and punches. Like all of his wins are just kind of just some craziness. He's been around the game for a while. I mean, 2013 was his first professional fight, so he's been doing it for about 8 years. Not much to write home about. He seems to be a little bit of a can crusher. Otherwise, just throw some wild stuff out there. But hey, a warm body. He was there. And he stands a fighting chance with his fighting style. He can catch anyone at any point in time. Zhu Rong, on the other hand, he's super young. He's someone that the UFC wants to push, one of these Chinese PI guys. The crazy thing is this dude, when I say he's super young, I'm saying he's 21 years old. And the craziness is that he has 21 career fights. This dude was fighting when he was like 15 and 16, and not just like a one-off, like multiple times a year. The problem is the people he was fighting in the Chinese regional scene. This guy is also a little bit of a can crusher. He came over to the UFC and fought Vargas, who is not good at all. Rodrigo Vargas is really bad. However, I did have a bet on Vargas that night. The line was off. It was way too much pressure for him, for Wrong. And yeah, he got kind of dominated. The first round, he got dominated. The second round, He was actually just stuck in a guillotine for literally like 4 minutes. And then the third round, he looked a lot better. He mixed in some wrestling, looked a lot better on the feet. He just seemed a little gun shy. I think he was just a little shell shocked to start. Overall, his cardio was good. His wrestling seemed okay. His striking was okay. He also liked the counter, and Vargas isn't really that great of a striker, so I think it was kind of throwing him off a little as well. And again, he was in a guillotine for like 4 minutes. His jiu-jitsu checks out. He has a few submission wins, as well as, his defense obviously is just fine. So I would say Wrong's a little more like, even though he's younger, he's a little more technically sound based on what I've seen. Or I should say a little controlled. Jenkins just throws wild stuff. I know Wrong, a lot of his finishes are super, super early against low level. He did that against the Cans. But I think Jenkins taking this fight on literally like 3 days notice. He's going to want to finish it early and come out wild as well. And if he comes out wild, Wrong does like to counter. So I'll pick Wrong. In regard to the bet, I'll probably just take whatever the under is. I'm hoping it's at 2.5. And if it's at 2.5, hopefully decent odds, and just take the under at that point. All right, next fight of the night, we have another women's fight. I think we have 3 or 4 of this fight, quite a few. And this one's a pretty decent one. It's also a pretty tricky one. We have Pannie Kianzad as a plus 110 dog against Raquel Pennington at minus 140. We'll start with Raquel. She's an interesting case, man. She's a generalist. Like, when I think about Raquel Pennington, I think that she has really good wrestling and she hits hard. But going back and watching the film, it is not as impressive as I remembered for whatever reason. She's a little overrated. But at the same time, you look at her losses, she's 11-8. You're like, it's not the greatest record. People she lost to were Holly Holm, former champ, Doreen Duran, former champ, Amanda Nunes, current double champ, Holly Holm, former champ, Jessica Andrade, former champ. And then she lost to Kat Zingano, title challenger, and Leslie Smith back in 2013, so quite some time ago. And Tori Adams, her second fight. So, like, literally from within the last 8 years, she's only lost to champions. But her wins also aren't like super impressive. She got the win over Jessica Andrade back after that split decision loss. She choked her out easily. Holly Holm, again, she just lost to twice. Otherwise, Ashley Evans Smith isn't that good. Beth Correa isn't that good. She should not have went to a split with her. That's very concerning. I don't know who Elizabeth Phillips is. Enough said. Miesha Tate, that was retiring Miesha Tate. She retired after that fight, so her head wasn't all the way in it, but I can't take that away from her. Irina Aldana, that was a fishy split decision, but Irina's good, and she got the nod, so nothing you can say there. And she looked okay against her in her last fight against Marion Renault, but again, Marion Renault is like 40 years old and had no background. She was just a gym teacher. So she beats everyone she's supposed to. She loses to all the step-ups that are champions. Pannie is not a champ by any means. Pannie did not impress me in her last fight. I had a big bet on Pannie. I actually had Pannie as my number 1 lock of the night when she went against Alexis Davis. Pannie lost that fight. I don't know why she got the nod that night. I got saved. I got lucky that the judges don't know MMA. But for whatever reason, they gave her the fight, and I felt extremely blessed because I thought she got dominated by Alexis Davis, who is a grappler by nature. So that's the concerning part. Alexis is super good on the ground. She just can't wrestle to save anything. To save her life, she cannot wrestle. So she's forced to get into these striking exchanges, and she's getting better on the feet, but she's older, and that's just not her forte. And Pannie is known for having such great boxing. She did a lot of boxing prior to, and her stand-up is good. Her jiu-jitsu, she's active. She has a very active guard, but that's not her bread and butter. She'll throw stuff out there. She will threaten it. She knows what's going on, but again, that's not her go-to. Her wrestling was rough to begin with, but it's gotten a lot better along the way. People like Sarge Eubanks were able to take her down, but she's able to get back to her feet and then kind of dominate. Again, Sarge doesn't have the best gas tank, so that was a lot of it as well. They have a common opponent in Betch where she dominated her like Raquel should have. But then you look at her losses. I mean, Raquel lost to champion. She lost to Julia Avila, who's like a contender. She lost to Macy Chazon, who I guess could kind of be a contender. So like she's not losing to terrible. I just the level of competition is so different, and I think Panny falls more towards Marion Renault side than she does the Amanda Nunez side. So at that point, the fight tape is telling me Panny. The records and just experience is telling me Rocky. God, I'll pick Raquel, but when it comes to a betting standpoint, I have to trust my eyes. And that would lean on the Panny side, even though her last fight really, really, really concerned me. Um, I'll pick Raquel, but if I had to bet, just because Panny's a dog, it's dog or pass, and I would just have to go with Panny at that juncture. All right, and the next fight of the night is another one where I really don't want to bet on either. There's a lot of these that, in all honesty, it should be a good card. It's going to be one of these low name but sneaky good cards. Sean Shelby did a hell of a job because all of these are 50-50 fights. So it sucks as a betting standpoint. As a fan standpoint, it's awesome. Next one being another example, we have Tafan Nakui going up against Mike Rodriguez. Tafan is a minus 135 favorite. Slow Mike is plus 105. We'll start with Mike. Yeah, he's not the greatest. He has okay striking. His wrestling's pretty bad. His cardio is pretty bad. He's going to have a really big reach advantage over Tafan, as most people do. And he can be backed up a little. He fights a lot better when he's going forward, but he's not a fan of getting hit. And I think that's because he might have a few durability concerns. I know Daniel Jung knocked him out. Let's see. Oh, that's just a toe hold. Oh, I guess that's actually the only time he's been tapped out a lot. Otherwise, yeah, the loss of Devin Clark doesn't look good. The Ed Herman one, I'm not going to get into. He won that fight. I'm just not even going to go over that. Danilo Marquez is not a good look getting tapped out. He doesn't really have a good ground game. That's his biggest Achilles heel. Tafan's ground game isn't that bad. You wouldn't think it's that good. You would think he just goes in and knocks everyone out by the way he looks, like a little mini Hulk, a little mini Francis. But in retrospect, I mean, his wrestling's not bad. His ground game's okay. His cardio checks out. It's actually a little better than Mike's, even though he's the more muscular guy. He throws pretty decent volume. It's weird that like when you watch, he's another one of these where you watch his fights and the numbers are saying something different than what you're seeing. But he does throw a decent amount of volume. And he does like the pressure. And again, Mike doesn't look the greatest one backing up. So that's really, really big here, especially being in the smaller cage. Tafan's going to have to pressure and get in close with this big reach disadvantage. So, I mean, to keep a long story short, not a big fan of this fight. If I had to pick, I would actually side with Vegas with the favorite with Tafan. It's not the biggest favorite in the world, so minus 135 is bettable. I personally, that's not going to be one of the first ones I run to and bet, but I understand it if you want to. So the pick is Tafan, the bet would be Tafan. And just to keep up this occurrence of things you don't really want to bet, we have Joaquin Buckley. Minus 225 favorite. Absolutely hate that. Too big of a favorite. Up against Antonio Arroyo. We'll start with good old Buckley. I mean, in all honesty, his striking's pretty good. His cardio's okay. It's actually not that bad. And he does try to mix in wrestling. He doesn't seem to be very successful when he shoots the takedown, but he'll try to mix it in, which is super nice. My biggest problem with him is when he goes in the punch, he like bobs and weaves, and when he does, he dips his head and he keeps getting head kicked. I know that Alessio DiCarico is the last person to head kick him, and he put him out easily. excuse me, but I was watching fights against Impa. I was watching fights against Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright hit him with about 3 head kicks that he just barely blocked as he's doing his little ducking and weaving. Um, and I don't like that. Like if you continually get head kicked, at some point someone's gonna put your lights out. And his last fight, he got his lights put out. So he's kind of kill or be killed. Arroyo is someone that has okay ground. It's an okay ground game. It's sneaky good. But he's predominantly a striker, and his favorite maneuver is a body and head kick. So I'm a little concerned with Buckley being a minus 225 favorite when he's susceptible to getting head kicked and he's fighting someone that loves throwing head kicks. It seems a little too obvious. It's just when it comes to Arroyo, he has one of the worst takedown defenses I've ever seen. He also has no gas tank whatsoever. Like it's not normal to have like the world's best gas tank at 85, but this dude has 2 minutes, and that's an anomaly as well in the wrong direction. So bad cardio and bad wrestling are not something I like to bet on at all. And I know, generally speaking, after you get knocked out, you seem to wrestle a little more. So if I'm Buckley's corner, I'm saying come out, wrestle him. It's easy money. But he's not a wrestler. He's a striker. So I don't know if I trust him to come out and just put on a singlet. Gosh. And even so, he's not going to tap him out. I don't think he's going to knock out Arroyo. Arroyo's pretty durable, man. I mean, looking at it, Muniz couldn't tap him out. He did get tapped out in 2017 twice. But again, that was a while ago. So, I mean, at that juncture, it kills me to say I would pick Buckley, but if I had to bet, this is another dog or pass scenario. I do not feel comfortable putting money on Antonio Arroyo, but I think my hand is forced because of the line. So pick is Buckley, bet is Arroyo, surprisingly. I surprised myself with that. The next fight of the night, we have Nate Maness going up against Tony Gravely. We have Maness as a plus 155 dog, come back on Gravely as minus 205. We'll start with Gravely. He's actually someone I like a lot. I think he's very, very good. He is really, really good wrestling. Like, it's great wrestling. His stand-up's okay. It's a work in progress. His jiu-jitsu, it's fine on the offensive front. On the defensive front, he could use a little work, solely on the fact that he gasses and then you can tap him out. I mean, you look at his losses here. He lost to Brett Johns, tapped him out in the 3rd round. You look at Patchy Mix, he caught him early, but Patchy is a stud on the ground. Shout out Western New York. Manny Bermudez armbarred him, but that was that point in time where Manny submitted everyone really quickly. That was a weird thing. Ricky Valdejas isn't the worst. He got tapped out in the middle 2nd round. So basically, these Pat Sabatini, UFC veteran now, and we know as a jiu-jitsu ace. So it's not that he's just bad on the ground. You got to look at the fact that Pat Sabatini is like a 3rd degree black belt. Manny Bermudez, black belt. He lost to Marab. Marab, we just said, is like a top 5 guy in the division. He got tapped out by Patchy Mix, who's like the number 2 guy in Bellator in the division. He got tapped out by Brett Johns. He's like a top 5 guy in the division in Bellator and great on the ground. Like, he's not losing to studs. He's literally losing to people, if they were all in the UFC, are all top 10 in the division. So, bantamweight's really good. Top 15, I would say. So no, he has 0 losses to any scrubs. And he has some decent wins. I mean, the Burchak win, he got a good knockout. He looked good there. You see it improving. Draco Rodriguez is in the UFC. He TKO'd him in the 5th round. He has some decent wins on here too. He's only losing the absolute killers. Nathan Maness is not a killer. Nathan Maness, he has pretty decent stand-up. It's just not, I should say it looks better because of how hard he hits. It's really not that good, but when he touches you, you feel it. He's very, very heavy-handed, but he's a little hittable out there, and that's why it isn't the greatest. He can dish it out, and he can take it, but he takes a lot of it. And when you look at his losses, he's 13-1. He should be 13-2 because that win over Johnny Munoz, that was a very, very questionable win. The judges kind of gifted him that one, in all honesty. Johnny Munoz should be an undefeated fighter, but per the record, he is not. And his other loss where he actually didn't get the judge's nod. I want to say he lost to a wrestler as well. No, he got sidekicked. Interesting. Very, very interesting. But Luke Sanders wrestles pretty well. And yes, he had that win too, but he was getting his shit rocked to begin. He was losing on the feet and he was getting out wrestled. And then he came back and he won. Johnny Munoz, he was getting destroyed on the ground. I think Johnny won, but the judges gave it to him. So he seems to struggle with wrestlers, and that's what Tony's the best at. And he's pretty low volume. So at that juncture, the pick is undoubtedly Tony. I'm not the biggest fan of the line because Tony gasses and Nathan is a pretty good gas tank. He's notorious for losing and coming back and getting wins. This is definitely that's how Tony loses. He starts winning and then he gasses out and he gets submitted. So just like the Antonio Arroyo, where you're like, Buckley should win, but the things he's bad at is exactly how Antonio wins. Kind of the same scenario, but I can't do it twice. Tony's very good. Ethan Maness is not a Marab or a Manny Bermudez or a Brett John. So the pick is Tony, and the bet would be Tony too. And minus 205 isn't that bad, but a lot of money's coming in on Tony. So I would definitely do it sooner rather than later to bet on him. All right. And then next fight of the night, we have Christos Giagos going against Armin Jarukian. Don't have to spend a lot of time on this fight, in all honesty. Because Christos Giagos is a plus 475 favorite, underdog. Arman is minus 800 dog. We'll start with Giagos. He has pretty good wrestling. He is okay jiu-jitsu. His stand-up is very, very questionable, and he doesn't have the best gas tank. He tends to slow down a little bit. He doesn't have any good wins. He's a can crusher. And then when you give him someone decent like Jakar Close, Charles Oliveira is a champ, but Josh Emmett, Chris Wade, Gilbert Burns is pretty good. But you see the thing when he fights someone that's a pretty good wrestler, or is actually UFC caliber, he has a tendency to get beat. He only beats people with very, very terrible wrestling or just can. In all honesty, Armin is neither. Armin has very, very good wrestling. It's actually better than Giagos. His striking is where he lacks, but Giagos is a lot worse. So he has a striking advantage. He's the better wrestler. I would say it's a wash on the ground. And Armin is 24 years old. This dude is the future. His cardio is better than Giagos. He does have weight cut issues. He did miss weight his last fight against Matt Frivola, so do keep an eye out for that. And he does usually train at Tiger Muay Thai, but obviously he can't right now with the pandemic. But he's at AT&T right now, which is a really good camp for him, especially developing young talent. And Mike Brown just raves about this guy. He can't get enough of him. So yeah, there's not a lot of reason to spend a lot of reason to spend a lot of time on this because it's minus 800. You can't bet that. Obviously, I'm going to pick Armin. It's just he doesn't seem to finish a lot of his fights. You see, Mercier was a decision, Davi Ramos decision, Frivola decision. So you're really trying to figure out how he wins, not if he wins. I think the wrestling is going to gas out Giagos. So you might be able to get a decent line with Armin inside the distance. And that's the route I would take. I wouldn't do submission. I wouldn't do knockout because it could be a ground and pound. I could see TKO. I could see a submission. I would just pick him inside the distance and hope that it's decent money because you're going to need something a lot better than minus 800. All right. And then next fight of the night, we pretty much have a pick 'em. We have our last women's fight. We have Mandy Bohm coming in against Ariana Lipsky. Mandy at minus 110, Ariana at minus 120. We'll start with Ariana, the queen of violence, as she was dubbed, but clearly is not. She's someone based on the looks that the UFC wanted to market. Problem being, she was an absolute killer on the regional scene and is straight ass when it comes to the UFC. She's supposedly has good striking. It looks good on the regional scene. It has not translated in the UFC. Mainly because we don't see much of it. You see her win against Luana Carolina was a knee bar. So she showed off her ground game a little. Otherwise, I don't know what ground game she's showing off anymore, because there is one clear path to victory to beat Ariana, and that is to take her down and ground and pound her. It is not difficult. We have seen the worst wrestlers in the division do so. Antonina Shevchenko is probably, I thought, was the worst wrestler in the division. She went out there and looked like Khabib against Ariana, took her down with ease, ground pounded her. Montana De La Rosa has sneaky good wrestling, but she took her down with ease and ground and pounded her and got the finish. Molly Meatball McCann is a British boxer. She was able to take her down twice. JoJo Calderwood has like one career takedown in the UFC, and it is against Ariana Lipski. She has by far probably the worst takedown defense I've ever seen. In general, like I've never seen anyone not have anything off of their back. Again, it's weird because she has an armbar victory over Diana Belbita, who's in the UFC. She has that knee bar win over Liana, so she like knows what's going on down there. I just don't know why she can't utilize it, why she can't get up, and why she can't stuff the takedown. When it comes to Mandy, though, Mandy is not a boxer, or sorry, she is not a wrestler. So it's not as simple as you would think. She is undefeated. She's pretty long and lanky. Ariana, a lot of her striking looked good because she has such a reach advantage. She might have a reach disadvantage here. Mandy is pretty long, man. Her wrestling's a little questionable. She does a good job mixing it in, but at the same time, she trains out of Conor McGregor's camp. So they're not really known for their wrestling, but Conor is decent wrestling. I mean, he doesn't usually use it offensively, but he has pretty good counter wrestling. Or wrestling defense, takedown defense. They know how to train wrestling. And what is it, UB Ireland? I forgot what it's called. Irregardless, like she's one of these people that she knows she's not a wrestler, so they don't really see it coming. And so she has a nice little body lot. So I love the fact that she mixes it in, stays unpredictable, just helps her. She doesn't have the greatest strength of schedule. It's not her fault. I mean, she's 7-0. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing. I don't fault her at all. But she is 32, so if she's gonna do this, she has to do it now. But on the feet, I would say it's even 50-50. Wrestling, anyone going against Lipski is gonna have an advantage. And on the ground, I would probably say Lipski probably has the advantage, but she doesn't know how to use it off her back. So if it's 50-50 on the feet and one person will at least attempt to take down and Lipski can't stop it, I'm gonna have to pick her. So at the end of the day, the pick would be Bomb and the bet would probably be Bomb as well, unfortunately. But I again don't want to bet that either. I don't trust a boxer to take down Lipski and finish her, even though everyone does and can. That's not her bread and butter, so I don't want to trust that. Put money on it. All right, and then we are to the co-main event of the evening. Trying to go a little quicker here. Again, there's 1,000,001 fights. We have Ion Cutelaba minus 145 going up against Devin Clark at plus 115. Let's start with Devin Clark because I thought this would be a pretty close fight. I was like, oh, they're both pretty good wrestlers. We'll see who's better on the feet, maybe kind of get some information. When I went back and I did fight tape, I think Devin Clark is one of the worst light heavyweights in the UFC. He sucks. He's not good. I will never put money on Devin Clark. He's credentialed in wrestling, but I don't see it. I don't know where it goes when he gets in the cage. I know you have people like GSP who never wrestled a day in their life and has like the most takedowns in the division. But I'm telling you right now, it seemed to have cut off a little. So hopefully we're still running here. So we're just going to hop right back in where we were. So sorry about the technical issues, but yeah, Devin Clark is a terrible, terrible person when it comes to fighting. So I'm going to fly through this just in case I had any sort of, if the technical issues ruined anything. We'll fly through this. Devin Clark, not a good wrestler in the ring or in the cage. He is on paper, but not on the cage. He can be backed up, very low volume, not good striking, not good jiu-jitsu. All of his losses are by finish. So you can finish this guy pretty easily. Ion Cutelaba, really, really good wrestling, but his cardio is trash. His striking is not good, but it's better than Devin Clark's. His wrestling, I would say they should equal out, but Eon's going to win the first round easily. His jiu-jitsu on top is okay. He's does have some losses, like 6 losses, but two of them are to Magomed Ankalaev. One of them's to Glover Teixeira, who's fighting for a title, could be champ. One of them is to Jared Cannonier, former, almost fought for a title, like Misha Cirkunov. He's only lost to the best of the best. So although he has some cardio issues, all I need to do is for him the last 10 minutes. He did just change gyms. And he seems to be thinning out. So as long as he has at least 10 minutes in him, the pick is going to be Eon and the bet is going to be Eon as well. And then that just takes us to the main event here. We have Anthony Lionheart-Smith at -175 going up against Ryan Spann at +140. Lionheart, honestly, he's kind of a slow starter. And if you take him down, he does accept bottom position, which I'm not a fan of. His striking is just okay. It's not the greatest, but since he moved over to Factory X, he actually has a pretty good jab that he throws out there. His jiu-jitsu is underrated. It's pretty good. And his cardio is what he's known for. He usually, again, is a slow starter. He usually loses and then come back and gets a finish, so he needs a lot of cardio to do that. But he's very hittable. When you look at his before he started throwing that jab out there, it's gotten better. But you look at his stats, he throws like 3 significant strikes per minute and is absorbing like 6 of them. Like, it's bad. It's like he's getting hit twice as much as he's putting out. But that's probably why he emphasized the jab to try to help out. When you look at his opponent, Ryan Spann, just not enough experience in my eyes. I mean, Smith has fought like Thiago Santos and John Jones, and he's fought Volkan Ozdemir. Like, he fought the best of the best in the division. Ryan Spann is not. Ryan Spann is getting knocked out by Johnny Walker and losing close splits to Sam Alvey. I do think he's getting better and better. His striking is okay. He's kind of hittable too, but he's kind of the tale of two people. He comes out there and he pressures you and he puts it on you. But if he doesn't finish you early, he has sneaky good chokes. His wrestling's okay. He hits super hard, but his cardio is questionable. And that makes him hittable in the later rounds. That makes his chin a little questionable in the later rounds. And this is a 5-round fight. And if he's slowing down and barely surviving against Sam Alvey in the third, I'm scared of what Anthony's going to look like in the third or fourth or fifth. So this has a slow start from Anthony, and then coming back and winning written all over it. And I would say if it's going to be Spann, you take him inside the distance. What I would do, I would probably do parlays with Anthony because I do think he's going to win. So I'd parlay Smith. And if that parlay's still surviving in the main event, then I would just throw a random bet on the dog on Spann and do it by inside the distance because that's the only way he wins. He's probably not even going to tap him. I think he would have to knock him out. So I would probably do Spann by KO, and then parlay Smith is the way I would play it. That way you're kind of covering both your ends, just kind of hedging a little. Otherwise, that is UFC Vegas 37. Or 5. UFC Vegas Spann versus Smith. Again, I'll put the official bets don't go out until after weigh-ins on Saturday morning. I will put my Instagram and Twitter in the description. Otherwise, I hope we're able to, continue winning ways. I'll put another podcast out about football week 2 as well. And let's try to get paid, baby.